From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the REPORT Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of our REPORT Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. I am joined here by Sports Director Kevin Suits. I'm Jessica Blum. We're here to talk about a Sweet 16 sweep here tonight in Lincoln, rounding out the regional final view.
That's tough to say. Sweet 16 sweep.
Yeah,
Nicely done.
Thank you. I fumbled a little bit.
As impressive as Nebraska's volleyball performance tonight.
Dominant win. I cannot believe... I should be able to believe after watching much of the season. I was actually going to talk to you about this. There haven't been many games this season, looking back as a whole, to what games truly tested Nebraska and their limits and going into the bench and everything. So this one I don't think was one of those games. No. I'll give a little credit to Matt's team, but this was an impressive one for the regional.
Kansas head coach Matt Ulmer said on Thursday the goal, what he wanted his squad just to push Nebraska, to make them sweat a little bit. They did not. Many teams don't, though, Jessica. Like this team, that Nebraska, the way it's just made up, and you know, knowing that that's the mission of Kansas, you know, they just want to try to make the number one team in the country, you know, break a sweat and maybe have some nervous moments, push them a little bit. But Nebraska started the game, I believe, on a 4-0 run. They had, I believe, 3 blocks over the first 7 rallies of the match. And that defense really set the tone for Nebraska. And then they just went to work. With the defense working, Bergen Riley was feeding the middles. And get this, Nebraska's 3 middle blockers finished tonight with 21 kills on 28 swings. Rebecca Alec hit a perfect 1,000 in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. She wasn't playing against Class D1 competition in high school volleyball. This is against Kansas. And that's what Rebecca does on a big, big stage.
I'm glad you said that. I had a note in there myself, a moment for the middles tonight. I also made a note, too, that with the pace of the blocks they had, we were a little bit on watch for the season record in their blocks. It was 16, I think, on the season is their record, but they got up to about 10 tonight as a team and really led... It was just dominant all across the board with, defense, talking about their offense, too, and Rebecca and Andy both leading the team with both 9 kills apiece. It's been 16 years. This was another stat I wanted to throw your way. It's been 16 years since there was an undefeated champion to win the NCAA tournament, and that was 2009. That was Penn State. So,
ooh.
Nebraska.
Okay. So I remember the 2008 Penn State team. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness, that's one of the all-time great teams under Russ Rose. They did not lose a set until the Final Four. The 2008 Penn State team. They
were on that list. So it was that team
because Nebraska played them. That was Nebraska was the first team to take a set from Penn State in 2008. They did it at what was then the Quest Center in Omaha. And Jessica, I will still contend that is one of my all-time favorite matches I have ever attended. Nebraska lost, but it was David and Goliath. Goliath being a Penn State team that hadn't lost a set all season. And Jordan Larson of the Huskers took 2. The match went 5. It was electric. You can imagine what the crowd was like. It's been 16 years since
16 years.
A team has gone undefeated. Well, not only has Nebraska gone undefeated, now it's 33-0. The Huskers have lost only 7 sets throughout the course of the season. It's pretty remarkable, especially when you think Nebraska has a first-year head coach. Right? And, this team has been motivated from the conclusion of last season in the Final Four with the heartbreaking loss to Penn State. And they have everybody that's come across their way has felt the brunt of that fury that this team has been motivated by.
So now Nebraska moves to 33-0 on the season themselves. They're in that. That's why we're talking about this. They're in that category of being undefeated, maybe going on to the championship. We've got to work our way there. We're seeing Nebraska move into the Elite 8 on Sunday. There's a lot of other good teams within the Elite 8, too, talking about what matchups are going to play over the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. The game before Nebraska, Texas A&M and Louisville, that was quite an impressive match. I took a lot of notes from that one.
Yeah, that might have been the match of the tournament.
Yeah, it really was.
Credit to a lot of Nebraska fans. They went to the Devaney Center early to watch Danny Busboom Kelly's former team, Louisville. I think that's kind of been the sentimental favorite around here, not just this year, but I think in previous years, because folks here, with Danny being, a native of Nebraska and growing up just south of Lincoln, in Cortland, yeah, of course, like they want to support one of their own. And I think a lot of fans here have really enjoyed following Louisville volleyball over the past, the 8 years prior to this one. And so here that team is, and the local fans get a chance to watch them, even though Danny's not the coach anymore. There's the attachment there. And not to mention Dan Meskey is now coaching that team. And Meskey was a grad assistant at Nebraska on Nebraska staff. And he, of course, was Danny's right-hand man at Louisville. And that was the easy choice for them to hire. So that was kind of the context of that match. And, of course, Texas A&M, Trev Alberts was there.
He was.
And,
I saw that.
Beyond the storylines, Jessica, it was a great match.
Yeah.
Louisville won set one. And Louisville was down by 6 in set 2.
They were coming back each set.
Came back and won set 2. And then in set 3, it's 22-22.
Oh.
And Louisville had just erased a couple of points, and they had some momentum. And if they could have scored a couple more points, they are then into the Elite Eight.
Mm-hmm.
But volleyball's crazy like this. You side out, you score the next point, and the whole thing flips. It's crazy to think a match that can last 2.5 hours can come to a couple of small moments, and that's what happened for Texas A&M. They made critical points, and then they ended up extending the match. They win it in 5. And so that's who Nebraska is going to draw on Sunday. It's a 2 o'clock match, and no surprise, it's going to be at 2 o'clock because that is the national television window. It's not going to be on ESPN. It's going to be on ABC, so network television. Mm-hmm. And I've got to believe that match is going to do some pretty nice viewership numbers on a Sunday afternoon.
I saw you joke about the 10 o'clock tonight because who was watching the 10 o'clock when you had Nebraska volleyball going on? But that's why we're here tonight. We're wrapping up. If you weren't at the 10 o'clock, Kevin had some great stuff. We'll have it up on our web later. But, yeah, it was a great match to see Nebraska take a dominant force, keep going in this tournament. I know a lot of the commentators in this game were talking about DBK setting the standard, really, with this team, still wanting to improve, even though they're already pretty good. They want to include a lot more players in practice, still making it loose so they can be confident in gameplay. That's all really coming together, and you can see it in these games lately.
Sometimes you worry about when a team gets on a dominant run, complacency, right? And, you don't want to chase stats. And that's the big MO with this team, Jessica, is like they don't care about the individual. They care about the team. They want to hang a banner. Don't worry about the All-American wall. That's kind of Danny's analogy with all of this. And she has gotten everybody to subscribe to that theory and play selflessly. And a couple of notes, we'll talk about that in a second, about examples of that from tonight, which are pretty fascinating. But this team, it doesn't matter that it's Kansas. It doesn't matter that it's going to be Texas A&M on Sunday. It didn't matter that it was K-State the previous week or Long Island in the previous round. For them, it is truly about operating at its, try to max out and hit its ceiling, play as well as they possibly can. And, having watched this team since August, I would argue that tonight, was this their best match of the year? It's one of their most dominant ones. No, I think when they went out to Penn State and they had that 25-6 set against Penn State, that might have. But I think that was the moment for this team that they realized, or maybe from a fan's perspective, they realized like, oh wow,
what we're capable
of. This team's for real.
That fan, yeah.
But now, like a couple months later, you already know that this team is for real. And you're just watching them continue to elevate. And one of the great separators here is the fact that Nebraska can run its offense at such an incredibly fast tempo. The block never gets set up for the other team. And they don't know where the ball is going because Bergen Riley's ascension has been pretty drastic and remarkable. Yeah. And, people that know me and have talked about volleyball with me, I am campaigning for Bergen Riley to be the national player of the year. I think she is more than deserving of that accolade for what she's been able to do. with this Nebraska offense and with some of the ways that Danny Busboom Kelly has challenged the junior setter. Back to the point I made about like the selfless elements of this team. So this week was very untraditional, and it threw Nebraska some curveballs. So they did this tonight after a week in which their starting setter battled a little bit of an illness, and Campbell Flynn is not going to play the rest of the year. She's the backup setter. So your two setters on the team, one's not feeling well, the other one can't play because she has a broken finger.
Yeah.
What do you do? Setter is the most important position on the floor. Macy Bosiger, who's a defensive specialist, a senior for this team, and a serving specialist, she is now practicing at the setter position. And during warmups, if you didn't know all this and you were, in your seat watching the end of the Louisville Texas A&M match, and now finally Nebraska gets to take the court, and you stand up and you cheer and like, oh my goodness, it's 9:25. Can we finally get the match? But now you're watching warmups, Jessica, right?
Yeah.
And you see Macy setting the ball. What? But that's the selfless nature of this team. They are able to just fill in a spot. And I'm sure Macy probably enjoyed this week. Like, she was a setter in high school, and she was a very successful setter at Norris, playing for her mother. And, they were at state every single year. She broke records while she was a setter. So it's not like they're asking somebody to do something beyond the skill set. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Macy would say it was like riding a bike. It came right back to her. But she did have to her benefit. Just put the ball in the area, and Virginia Adriano is going to hammer it, right? Yeah. Harper has a range that's pretty wide. Mm-hmm. So get it toward Harper, and she is
I was going to say, Taylor Lanfear got in on a set, too, I think. Across the court and set it up for Harper. So it was just fun to watch.
Rebecca Alec even likes to say that she gives up really good sets. Mm-hmm. And the coaching staff has even said that Rebecca Alec, out of system, sometimes is one of their better setters. So, they have I don't want to say it was a deficiency this week, but they had just a different deck handed to them, and they're able to just take it in stride and still be completely okay.
You have to wonder, covering Bergen Riley, though, as many years as you have, would she have let a game go? Even being sick, would she have really found a way to play anyway?
How sick, right?
That's true. That's true.
In some instances, you just flat out can't. Mm-hmm. But in other instances, you persevere through and you make it happen. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a weird week, but if you didn't know any of that and you just watch the volleyball, you're like, God, they're just doing their thing all over again. But, yeah, we've spit out some stats, and I think the most notable ones from tonight's sweep over Kansas, Rebecca Alec, 9 of 9, hit a perfect 1,000. Andy Jackson had 9 kills. She had 5 blocks. The team totaled 10 blocks. And Manaya Obeche off the bench at the end, their number 3 middle, who I think would be number 1 middle on most teams in college volleyball. She came in, she had 3 kills on 4 swings, and some of the swings that Manaya took tonight were just absolute rockets. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's like the Kansas is probably saying, like, no more, like, enough, all right? Throw in the towel.
Where's the white flag?
Yes.
Let me wave it. The other couple stats, service aces, Nebraska had 6.
Yeah.
And Kansas had 6 service errors, so I'm sure that contributed a little bit. But like you said, those were definitely the big stats of the night.
Well, Kansas came into this match with 185 aces on the season. Nebraska, I believe, is around 130. So that was like, statistically, I was trying to find before the match, like, what does Nebraska not have the advantage in? And it was aces.
Interesting.
So one of the strengths of this Kansas team is they can serve pretty tough. They had 1 ace tonight. And I'm curious what Nebraska passed. I thought Nebraska passed extremely well, which allowed the middles to get the ball as frequently as they did and have the success rate that they did. So as we move it forward, Jessica, it's Texas A&M on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows the time and the TV network. It's ABC. It's going to be a blast, and Nebraska's playing for a spot in the Final Four. From a volleyball sense, this Texas A&M team, they're one of the better blocking teams in college volleyball. So will they be able to slow a Nebraska team down that is hitting, over 400 for the NCAA tournament? I don't even know what the number is. It's ridiculous. They were 379 on the season going into tonight. And when you hit 450, just saying that out loud is just nuts. They hit 450 in a Sweet 16 match. So A&M They're good blocking, but can they be good blocking against this Nebraska offense with all the weapons they have?
It was a block fest in that game before. Texas A&M had 17 tonight. Yeah. Louisville had 14 of their own. But yeah, that is the big question, and we'll leave Sunday to answer it.
Sure.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time here tonight, Kevin, as always. Always know that the REPORT Husker Show is your source for the Husker headlines, as well as Husker highlights. We'll be sure to keep on rolling with the REPORT and good stuff with Kevin Suits and Chase Madison back there in the sports department. But we wish you all a good night, and until next time.
You've been listening to the REPORT Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the REPORT on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.